Nor did Mrs. Midhurst shrink from her duty in all substantial and in real good offices to the girl. She, who spent hundreds at the dressmaker's every year on account of her many daughters, did not disdain to get Janie's serge frocks at a cheaper shop, and to have them made by an inexpensive workwoman, so that the girl should have the very utmost she could get for her poor little money. Was not this real goodness, real honesty, and devotion to their duty? But to love a little thing like that with no real claim upon them, and nothing that could be called specially attractive about her, who could be expected to do it? They had plenty, almost more than enough, of children of their own. These children were big boys and girls, gradually growing, in relays, into manhood and womanhood, when this child came upon their hands. There was no room for her in the full and noisy house. When she was grown up, most of the Midhurst children were married, but there was one son at home who, in the well-known contradictiousness of young people, it being a very wrong and, indeed, impossible thing, was quite capable of falling in love with Janie, and one daughter with whom it was also possible that Janie might come into competition. The young Midhursts were nice-looking young people enough, but Janie was very pretty. If Providence did not fully consider all the circumstances, it cannot but be felt that Providence would not carry out, as often is done, such ridiculous arrangements. Janie was very pretty. Could anything more inconvenient, more inappropriate be conceived? The poor little girl had, accordingly, spent most of her life at school, where she had, let it not be doubted, made many friendships and little loves. But these were broken up by holidays, by the returning home of the other pupils, while she stayed for ever at school. And not at one school, but several, for in his extreme conscientiousness, her guardian desired to do her every justice, as he said, and prepare her fully for the life, probably that of a governess, which lay before her. Therefore, when she had become proficient in one part of her education, she was carried on to another, with the highest devotion to her commercial value, no doubt, but a sublime indifference to her little feelings. Thus she had been in France for 2 years and in Germany for 2 years, so as to be able to state that French and German acquired in these countries were among the list of her accomplishments. English, of course, was the foundation of all, and Janie had spent some time at a famous Academy of Music, her guardian adding something out of his own pocket to her scanty means, that she might be fully equipped for her profession. And then she was brought, I will not say home. Janie fondly said home, but she knew very well it did not mean home. And it was while Mrs. Midhurst was actually writing out the advertisement for the Times and the Morning Post and the Guardian, which was to announce to all the world that a young lady desired an engagement as governess, that her husband burst in with the extraordinary news that Mr. Rosendale, who had chanced to travel with Janie from Flushing on her return, and who had afterwards, by a still greater chance, met her when asked to lunch at the Midhursts', and stared very much at her, as they all remarked, had fallen in love with, and wanted to marry, this humble little girl. "Fallen in love with Janie?" Mrs. Midhurst cried. "Fallen in love with you, Janie?" said Agnes Midhurst, with a little emphasis on the pronoun. He was not, indeed, quite good enough to have permitted himself the luxury of falling in love with Mr. Midhurst's daughter, but he was an astonishing match for Janie. He was a man who was very well off. He could afford himself such a caprice as that. He was not handsome. There was a strain of Jewish blood in him. He was a thick-set little man, and did not dress or talk in perfect taste. But in love, these two words made all the